I think it's time we ask ourselves if we still know the freedoms that were intended for us by the Founding Fathers.
They seem to be in full-scale retreat from spending cuts and are talking about raising people's taxes again. And I have only one thing to say to the tax increasers. Go ahead, make my day.
If we lose freedom here, there's no place to escape to. This is the last stand on earth. Those who would trade our freedom for security have embarked on this downward course. Whether we believe in our capacity for self-government or whether we abandon the American Revolution and confess that a little intellectual elite in a far distant capital can plan our lives for us better than we can plan them ourselves.
Conduit News Radio with Paul Harrell is on now.
Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the program. Thank you so much for being with us. My name is Paul. You have found the intersection of conservative ideas and reality, where we are building a liberty machine. We got a great show for you coming up. We're going to talk China, tariffs, the trade war. Man, I saw this headline from Michael Busler. From the Drudge Report. We're going to be talking with Michael Busler, but I saw this headline over the Drudge Report that Macron had somehow tamed the president or something. I mean, it's just really, I mean, it's almost, I mean, at this point I'm thinking, are they saying things like that? It's not like the president's going to read that and not come out and call it fake news and say that's not true, he didn't tame me. But anyway, I found that interesting. We'll talk with Michael Busler. He is a professor of economics and finance at Stockton University in New Jersey. He'll be calling in coming up at 6:33. Then at 7:30, we'll be talking with Jonesboro City Councilman Bobby Long. And, boy, he's got some interesting ideas about, sales tax policy, local sales tax policy. There's a special election in Jonesboro coming up on the 10th of September to raise sales tax. It's a pretty divisive issue. You feel one way about it or the other. And Bobby has done he's, been a pretty staunch opponent against, and he's done a little history lesson. He's gone back and looked at what was said in the past, looked at what was said decades ago, and, when they were, let's just think, not decade, like 10 years ago. If you go back 10 years, and actually think if you even go 10 years, before that, he has gone and looked up what the politicians said back then versus what they're saying now, and got the articles, and it's pretty amazing. It's really is it's pretty amazing. Carefully crafted language. Carefully crafted language. We've talked about this before, but you really can't. Well, first off, let's do this real quick. A refresher course. Governor Asa Hutchinson on China. Yesterday, well, first of all, over the weekend, Talk Business and Politics, talking about how Chinese investors are just like all other investors. Versus this.
As we speak, Beijing is employing a whole-of-government approach, using political, economic, and military tools as well as propaganda to advance its influence and benefit its interests in the United States.
And I have wanted to welcome back to Arkansas Chairman Chu. Please give Chairman Chu a round of applause.
China is also applying this power in more proactive ways than ever before to exert influence and interfere in the domestic policy and politics of this country.
Chairman Chu, I got to know as he is the CEO and chairman of Shandong Ruyi Technology Group out of Shandong Province.
Over the past 17 years, China's GDP has grown 9-fold. It's become the second largest economy in the world. Much of this success was driven by American investment in China. And the Chinese Communist Party has also used an arsenal of policies inconsistent with free and fair trade, including tariffs, quotas, currency manipulation, forced technology transfer, intellectual property theft, and industrial subsidies that are handed out like candy to foreign investment.
We've been to Shandong province a number of times since I've been governor. We've called on people, and Chairman Chu gave us the opportunity to meet with him at Ruyi, at their technology group there in Shandong, and saw his incredible facility. We asked him to visit Arkansas. He did. So Chairman Chu, we're delighted to have you here. I'm excited about signing this agreement with you, and I welcome you to Arkansas.
These policies have built Beijing's manufacturing base at the expense of its competitors, especially the United States of America.
And I wanted to recognize Chairman Li to my right, who is the founder of Sun Paper of Shandong Province in China. I also want to recognize Secretary Ma of Shandong Province.
As President Trump said just this week, in his words, we rebuilt China over the last 25 years.
Last November, as you know, I traveled to Shandong Province. I met with Chairman Li. I toured Sun Paper Company along with Mike Preston. While in China, we signed a letter of intent on behalf of the state of Arkansas with Sun Paper, indicating that Sun Paper wanted to put a major bioproducts mill in South Arkansas,
The Communist Party has set its sights on controlling 90% of the world's most advanced industries, including robotics, biotechnology, and artificial intelligence. To win the commanding heights of the 21st century economy, Beijing has directed its bureaucrats and businesses to obtain American intellectual property, the foundation of our economic leadership, by any means necessary.
Chairman Li and I met yesterday. Chairman Li indicated to me that Sun Paper has selected Arkadelphia in Clark County as the location of a $1 billion bioproducts mill.
Beijing now requires many American businesses to hand over their trade secrets as the cost of doing business in China. It also coordinates and sponsors the acquisition of American firms to gain ownership of their creations. Worst of all, Chinese security agencies have masterminded the wholesale theft of American technology, including cutting-edge military blueprints. And using that stolen technology, the Chinese Communist Party is turning plowshares into swords on a massive scale.
Well, thank you all for joining us via Skype from Beijing this morning. Here in Beijing, it is 10 p.m. in the evening. I've had a very successful trip to China.
China now spends as much on its military as the rest of Asia combined. And Beijing has prioritized capabilities to erode America's military advantages on land, at sea, in the air, and in space.
I've spoken at Tsinghua University here in Beijing, which was a treat for me to speak with young Chinese students about Arkansas, and also to talk about the relationship between China and the United States.
China wants nothing less than to push the United States of America from the Western Pacific and attempt to prevent us from coming to the aid of our allies. But they will fail. Beijing is also using its power like never before. Chinese ships routinely patrol around the Senkaku Islands, which are administered by Japan. And while China's leaders stood in the Rose Garden at the White House in 2015 and said that his country had, and I quote, no intention to militarize the South China Sea. Today, Beijing has deployed advanced anti-ship and anti-air missiles atop an archipelago of military bases constructed on artificial islands. China's aggression was on display this week when a Chinese naval vessel came within 45 yards of the USS Decatur as it conducted freedom of navigation operations in the South China Sea, forcing our ship to quickly maneuver to avoid collision. Despite such reckless harassment, the United States Navy will continue to fly, sail, and operate wherever international law allows and our national interests demand. We will not be intimidated, and we will not stand down.
And we'll be calling on multiple prospects in China, as well as continuing our relationship with Sun Paper in Shandong Province.
In recent years, China has taken a sharp U-turn toward control and oppression of its own people. Today, China has built an unparalleled surveillance state, and it's growing more expansive and intrusive, often with the help of U.S. technology. And when it comes to religious freedom, a new wave of persecution is crashing down on Chinese Christians, Buddhists, and Muslims. Last month, Beijing shut down one of China's largest underground churches. Across the country, authorities are tearing down crosses, burning Bibles, and imprisoning believers. And Beijing has now reached a deal with the Vatican that gives the avowedly atheist Communist Party a direct role in appointing Catholic bishops. For China's Christians, these are desperate times.
So, do you like him as a candidate?
I think he's brought a lot to the table. It's not my message. You know, I worry about the party in terms of expanding our base and what the message does to our recruitment of Hispanics, outreach to minorities. And so you've got to worry about the fall election and whether this is a message that's going to carry in Michigan, Ohio, and Florida, and those states that we need to carry.
The American people deserve to know. In response to the strong stand that President Trump has taken, Beijing is pursuing a comprehensive and coordinated campaign to undermine support for the president, our agenda, and our nation's most cherished ideals.
I think you've got to listen to what he says and how he conducts himself. And I don't know that he would be that different from what he is now in negotiating with Vladimir Putin. So,
you think that's a good thing or a bad thing?
No, I don't think it's a good thing. You know, we need people who, in the presidency, that understand how the world works, understands that there's a time for bluster and there's a time for reason.
The Chinese Communist Party is rewarding or coercing American businesses.
Understand how the world works. Keep going, keep going.
Movie studios, universities, think tanks, scholars, journalists, and local, state, and federal officials.
And then, Chairman, you'll look out in the audience and you'll see multiple members of the governor's cabinet. We're also here to support you. You'll see multiple members of the state legislative assembly. They're here to support you, and specifically Senator Caldwell, Senator Ingram, Representative Murdoch, Representative Hollowell. These are your senators and your representatives now. You call on them and they're going to help you, guarantee it. And Senator English, I saw you out there too. Thank you for being here as well.
As we speak, Beijing is employing a whole-of-government approach, using political, economic, and military tools as well as propaganda to advance its influence and benefit its interests in the United States.
Yep. So that piece of video there is very important. It certainly, shows a contrast that I think's been there a long time. But if there was any doubt at all, the statement that the governor made, telling the president or, telling the media that he thinks it would be a mistake if U.S. companies pulled out of China, as the president suggested. Now, of course, who knows? The reports are that maybe there's more trade negotiations going on. And who knows? Maybe there's going to be a trade deal in the future, and the 6 Chinese communist entities are going to be coming to Arkansas. I don't know. I think it's odd that that these deals would go through. I don't know why we are in business with China, considering what we know about them, considering the things that they are attempting to do long term, almost kind of lulling America to sleep in a lot of ways. China doesn't make any sense. It really doesn't. I mean, this is what the governor said. It's very carefully crafted, if you think about it. He says, those are decisions that are made by Chinese investors. They look at the economy just like everyone else, and they look at the trade disputes and the impact it'll have on their individual businesses. I have not seen any indication that with the current investments that this is making a difference. So I guess he's saying, he goes on to talk about how the trade war impacts the timing of these Chinese communist entities coming to Arkansas. But you talk about carefully crafted language. I mean, my goodness, folks, he's claiming that Chinese investors are just like any other investor in a Western country that's actually got freedom and private property. I mean, it's the Communist Party of China. And these companies are not private. Can we say that they're not? It's not like they're privately owned. Any more than a noble owned his land back. You know what I mean? The king could come and just, now you don't have your land anymore. I'm going to take your. I'm basically going to delegitimize you. You're no longer. I mean, and that's what's going on here. I mean, these entities, they go to into these other countries as essentially, from what I can tell, spying operations, and that's a whole other discussion. But, who cares? I mean, does anyone care about this? Do you care? Does anyone care? Honestly, I mean, I wonder to myself, are there state, office holders that talk about how odd this is? I mean, the governor's legacy, if he were to have his way, would be to ink 6 Chinese deals, and really and truly, I'm sure they're all just one giant Chinese deal, because again, they're not actually private companies. Think about that for a second. It's all one, and a lot of them we're talking about, are from the Shandong province, this one province. By the way, the same province where Carter Heavy Industries is, that is the same name that's on that Gmail account that was forwarding all of Hillary Clinton's emails, or that was receiving all of Hillary Clinton's emails. So take that for what it's worth. We're going to take a break and be back in just a moment.
Hi, folks. I'd like to tell you about Conduit for Commerce. Conduit for Commerce is an Arkansas-focused nonprofit organization which receives no government funding. Its core beliefs are economic freedom, individual liberty, and limited government. Conduit for Commerce believes those principles are foundational to all individual freedoms and promotes these principles by educating Arkansans and your elected state officials concerning good government policies that will create a better life for all Arkansans. These traditional conservative values have proven throughout history to lift people from poverty, achieve individual desire, and assist in the pursuit of happiness. Conduit for Commerce operates on the basic belief that these principles and ideals of the American founding are worth conserving and renewing at each generation, especially today. Conduit for Commerce accomplishes this work only through the support and interaction of small businesses as well as individuals. Conduit for Commerce thrives from like-minded Arkansans' participation and partnership. It's only through the support of folks like you that Conduit for Commerce is able to be the conduit to the Arkansas State Capitol. Help us continue as Arkansas's primary small business policy entrepreneur through your financial support. Join us by visiting conduitforcommerce.org. Once you're at the site, click Support Our Cause at the top of your screen. Your one-time or monthly donation will directly impact Conduit for Commerce's mission to promote liberty and economic freedom in Arkansas. Together, we can build a liberty machine. That's conduitforcommerce.org.
Yeah, you know what? The Democrat ideology to me is so far, I mean, really and truly, it's so far out of the mainstream. I mean, if you go, and I've said this for a long time now, but if you go to your average person and you just go down the list of issues by issues, yeah, you're not going to agree 100% with everybody. But my goodness, at this point, the Democrat Party is, I just don't know how they can stand or even claim anything close to the moral high ground. And that's why every time you have a situation where, especially here in Arkansas, as the Democrat Party is getting less and less relevant, anytime you have a situation where a region or a district is possibly up for a change, the few remaining Democrats left are certainly vulnerable to Republican challengers, because I think the people of Arkansas have said that we don't like the Democrat Party anymore. They're not the party they were, and they're just not one that's compatible with Arkansas values today. And so that's why it was I was glad to see.
Need your daily news fix? Don't forget to tune in to Conduit News Radio with Paul Harrell.
There we go. Coming up at the top of the hour, let's dive into these numbers. They were in the Arkansas Democrat Gazette over the weekend. The headline here, Services Program overtops estimate. Arkansas Medicaid's cost up 4.7%. We're going to go over this, sucker. I told you we were going to do this yesterday, today, and so pretty interesting, I mean, the lack of a long-term memory here is really, I think, one that plagues a lot of us. Politicians can say X never happens, and then they get to explain it away, Really, really frustrating. We got a lot of programs that are just fiscally not sustainable in the future, and obviously Arkansas Medicaid is one of those. Particularly, it is the reason that we don't have any money for roads. It's the reason the tax cuts can't take place immediately. They have to be phased in. Period. The key driver of Arkansas spending right now is, future obligations is a program that continues to cost more and more and more. But I got an idea. That'll fix it. All you have to do is create another task force. That's the problem. You want to know why Arkansas is not prospering? It's because we don't have enough task forces. We just get a few more. I think we might find the balance, and prosperity will arrive in Arkansas. We just need more task forces. We'll be right back with Dr. Michael Bussler in just a moment.
To remind you that if you miss the daily live broadcast, you can always catch up and listen across our digital platforms on your smartphone or computer. First, you can watch the show on Facebook. Just use your internet browser and type in facebook.com/Conduit News. From there, select Videos on the left side of your screen. From there, you can watch the full 2-hour show each day or select specific interviews you want to watch. Another place you can watch the show is on YouTube. Just use your internet browser and type in youtube.com. Then, in the search bar, search for Conduit News. Select the Conduit News page as it appears. While here,
running a successful business in today's tech-driven world is no easy task, but Calmer Solutions understands the unique IT needs of the small to medium business environment. They'll implement proven solutions to manage your technology so you can concentrate on the important things. Calmer Solutions will save you money, reduce your downtime, and decrease your technology stress. Stay ahead of your competition with Calmer Solutions, taking care of technology so you can take care of business. Call 336-2169 and upgrade your IT service today.
Versions of the show right here on this page of the website. For audio-only versions of the show, you have some options. For Apple iPhone users, simply use the podcast app and search Conduit News. Subscribe to the podcast and get each hour of the show automatically in your app daily. You can also download the SoundCloud app from your app store and search Conduit News to find our station. Conduit News is the intersection of conservative ideas and reality. And now you know. You've got many options to watch what we do, listen to what we do, and find out what government is doing in your name. Learn more at conduitnews.com.
That Democrat Eddie Cheatham, Senator Cheatham, is drawing a challenger, a guy by the name of Ben Gilmore, who is on the line with us now. Ben, Republican candidate for State Senate District 26. How are you, sir?
I'm good, Paul. How are you? Thank you for having me on.
Absolutely.
How are you doing?
I'm doing great this morning. I'm glad that you could spend some time with us because, like I said, anytime you got the chance to flip another district from blue to red, I think is a good thing, and to paint contrasts in bold colors. So Ben, why did you decide to get into the race?
Well, for a couple of reasons, and I think you kind of hit the nail on the head. Being from that district, and growing up down there, and looking at some of the issues, but also, talking to folks down there that'll tell you that, maybe they voted Democrats before, but now the Democrat Party is not what they voted for years ago, and they've gone completely.
Everything the Marble Palace establishment keep trying to cover up. It's Conduit News Radio with Paul Harrell.
Here we go. Rising tariffs, tanking stocks, inside Trump's trade battle with China. This over at the New York Post. I'd like to bring back in Dr. Michael Busler, who is a professor of finance from Stockton University, public policy analyst. Dr. Busler, good morning to you.
Good morning, Paul. How are you? Thanks for having me. It's always my pleasure to be here.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. I'm glad you could spend some time with us. Well, I mean, it was a pretty eventful weekend. We had the president saying, hey, American companies, you need to get out of China. And then he said, he has the power to, force it to happen if necessary. And then you had the G7 summit. I mean, what was your takeaway from everything that happened over the last several days?
Well, I think what this shows is President Trump is negotiating. President Trump is not a politician. He's a business person. And as a business person, he's negotiating and looking at the end game rather than what's happening each week. So let's take a look at exactly what happened. First of all, we had the big drop in the stock market. That occurred because there are recession fears, and what stoked those fears was for a very short time, one day, an inversion occurred. Now, what does that mean? Well, normally, the longer you tie up your money, the more risk you take. so the higher the return or the yield that you get. In other words, you buy a 10-year bond, you get a higher interest rate than if you buy a 5-year bond. And if you buy a 5-year bond, you get a higher interest rate than a 2-year bond. So that's normally the way the yield works. It goes up the longer you tie up your money. For a brief time on one day last week, the short-term rate, the 2-year bond rate, was up a little higher than the 10-year rate. And that's called an inversion, when the short-term rate goes higher than the long-term rate. Now, the last 5 recessions, this happened about 2 years before the recession started. So there is some fears that this could mean a recession is coming. I also want to say that inversion occurs sometimes and you don't have a recession. So it doesn't necessarily mean there'll be a recession. In my view, a recession is still a couple of years away at least. And the inversion that we had really shouldn't have happened. And the reason is the Federal Reserve raised interest rates from the time President Trump was elected until the end of 2018, that 2-year period. They raised interest rates 8 times. Now, granted, interest rates were low and they did have to come up, but they raised them so fast that it tended to slow economic growth and it pushed short-term interest rates up. At the Federal Reserve last month, they cut the interest rate 1/4 point. In my view, they should have cut it 1/2 point. That would get interest rates more in line to what the economy is experienced today, I believe, and that inversion wouldn't have occurred. The stock market has rebounded from that. Now, with regard to the G7, President Trump, when he came into office, he took a look at every one of our trade agreements, and for whatever reason, every single one of them was slanted in favor of our trading partners and to the detriment of the U.S. For instance, in the auto industry, they make a car in Europe, sell it in the U.S., we charge a 2.5% tariff. We make a car in the U.S., sell it in Europe, they charge us a 10% tariff. Make a car in China, sell it in the U.S., we charge 2.5% tariff. We make a car in the U.S., sell it in China, they charge a 25% tariff. For whatever reason, on Corvettes, they charge a 50% tariff. So President Trump got into office and said that all of our trading partners, listen, we need to renegotiate these things so they're a little more fair. We encourage free trade, but it has to be fair. Well, every one of the trading partners was reluctant to renegotiate because they're in such a good position. So what does a business person do? And again, remember, Trump is not a politician. He's a business person. He's sort of learning to be a politician, but he's a business person. Well, when you have a reluctant trading partner, a business person creates a sense of urgency. And that's exactly what President Trump did. He put tariffs on everybody. Well, and it's working perfectly. Already, Mexico and Canada have agreed to a new deal. South Korea has signed a new deal. Just announced on Saturday, Japan and the U.S. have come up with a new deal. India is negotiating with us, and the toughest deal to negotiate will be with China because it's been so lopsided, and also they don't honor our intellectual property rights. In other words, they'll steal our technology. In fact, they require us to give them our technology before we can even go over there. So President Trump says this has to stop. We need a new trade agreement. I thought we had one back in April, and at the last minute, China said, we're not going to agree to all that, and the deal came off.
Right.
Now, President Trump said, I'm going to apply more tariffs, and China retaliated, and that's kind of where we are now.
So, I mean, I know last time we talked to you, maybe a week or 2 weeks ago, I think,
yeah.
We're talking about the idea of, do we get anywhere? Do you have a trade deal before the 2020 election? And I'm wondering now, with what happened over the last, couple of days, China putting more tariffs on us putting more tariffs on them, have the Chinese essentially said, look, we're going to try to maybe help the Democrats, or we want to wait out the president, and we don't think he's going to get a second term. I mean, is that what's going on here, where they just are saying they are a communist country, and I mean, I got a feeling that they would let their citizens suffer a lot more than maybe what our leaders would let us suffer. I don't know. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, let me say something about the suffering. I agree with you. They will let their citizens suffer. So what China did when Trump put the tariffs on Chinese steel, and now on clothing and other things are going to be put tariffs. But when Trump did that, China retaliated by putting tariffs on agricultural products. Soybeans in particular are getting hit. So that means agricultural food is going to be more expensive in China. Now, the reason U.S. manufacturers are in China producing is the wage rates are so low, it pays us to make stuff over there and ship it here. Well, if the wage rates are low, it means the people are not earning very much income. Now you just raise the price of food to them. It's going to create a lot of problems. Now, they have a totalitarian government, and they can just tell people what to do. But nonetheless, it is going to create some issues. The other thing is China needs us way more than we need them. They sell over $500 billion of their output to the U.S. And if we stop buying from them, and already we're cutting down what we're buying from them, but if we stop buying from them, their economy would go into a severe recession and maybe worse. So they've offset some of the effects of the tariff by devaluing their currency to try to soften some of the blow of these tariffs. They may. One theory is they're going to try to wait and see if Trump loses. I just don't know if they can wait that long. And again, President Trump is creating a sense of urgency, forcing them to the table. Last week, as you pointed out, he announced, I think all American companies ought to pull out of China. Well, if that happened, the Chinese economy would collapse. So he announces it just the other day. A day or two later, China says, well, we're ready to come back and start talking to you. We don't want any arguments. We want this to be a very calm solution.
Yeah.
So President Trump, I think, will put pressure on them so that they have to make a deal sooner rather than later.
I mean, I hope you're right, I mean, I think that would be a huge victory for the president and, attempting to stop some of these trade imbalances, that have gone on for a very long time. But, we also have, the situation, and I know you're not a military analyst, but, we also have what China is doing in the South China Sea militarily. And, to your point, him being a businessman, he's going to look at this, in as a totality. You know what I'm saying? I mean, this is so much bigger, I think, Dr. Bussler, than just a trade war.
Yeah, I agree with you, and there's even a little more to it than that. So not only are we dealing with China with this trade war, but the people of Hong Kong they don't want to lose their freedom, and China seems ready to take away their freedom. England handed over control of Hong Kong to the Chinese government in 1997. China set up what they refer to as a two-system government, where they allow the people of Hong Kong to elect their own governor and leaders, but they still have to follow the Chinese rules. Well, gradually, China's starting to take away some of the freedoms, and the people in Hong Kong don't want that, and that's why we're having these protests. So normally, the U.S. takes the position of people that seek freedom and democracy, we will support. But if we support them too heavily, now we're in direct conflict with China, so that's an issue while we're trying to resolve this trade deal. Complicating it even further, we're trying to get North Korea to denuclearize. China is North Korea's biggest trading partner and really supports North Korea. So we're trying to come up with a trade deal, a solution for Hong Kong, a solution with North Korea, and a solution for some of the military action that China is taking. And you make a great point. This is very, very complicated, and Trump is trying to negotiate all of these things and come up with a good solution.
Man, I tell you. Well, I certainly hope things. I mean, it is interesting that the president said X, and then they did come back. I mean, they did come back. One of their representatives said, "Hey, we want a calm resolution to this." Right. So I think maybe they don't know. They definitely know that the president is not somebody that you can predict and that sort of thing. Dr. Bustler, I really appreciate you coming on the program. It's always great to have you on, sir.
Thank you, Paul. It's always my pleasure to be here.
All righty, we'll do it again soon. We'll keep in touch, folks. We'll make a YouTube video of this, share it with your friends. It'll be up at conduitnews.com and the YouTube page later today. The telephone number is 870-275-9799. I want to remind you though that with this whole situation in China, that the one things that they are doing as well is they're buying ad space and op-eds and things in agricultural magazines, trying to target farmers, right? And corn. I think they're doing this with I think they look at Iowa as the corn farmers up there as the biggest possible get in trying to influence the 2020 election. And we would be kind of naive to suggest that China isn't looking at all of its options and has several different plans that they're setting up that they could push. We'll go ahead and try to sabotage them for 2020, or we'll go ahead and make a trade deal. That they obviously are, positioning themselves the way any country would in a trade war, Cold War, a war based on espionage, whatever. But then you've got this giant corn purchase that has just happened with Japan, like Dr. Bustler said, which the only thing I thought about was, that's going to make farmers happy. It's going to make people that grow corn happy, that he's trying to find, not new markets necessarily, but new deals that are going to, help alleviate some of this stuff. And then you get to the point where, China's going to have to feed their people somehow, right? I mean, they got to feed their people somehow. They got to have soybeans somehow. So, I mean, that's also something to think about here. I think it was Lindsey Graham, Senator Graham, that said, hey, we have more bullets than they do. Back home here in Arkansas, what are we doing? Well, our leadership is trying to do business with the Chinese by bringing them here. Like bringing the companies actually here, wanting them to locate here in the midst of all this. Communist Chinese entities. They are not companies. It's the Communist Party essentially setting up embassies disguised as companies. Actually, when you know that they're in a lot of ways, these companies are just shell companies. I mean, yeah, they're going to have their front like their storefront where they actually do. It's like what is it? What was the name of Don Corleone? They sold olive oil. They were in the olive oil business. You know what I'm saying? In The Godfather, olive oil. Really olive oil. Yeah. We make garments. We also steal your technology and stuff while we're over here, but we do that in the back. We cutting down trees, making paper. I mean, what are you doing? I mean, that's what we're doing. Now in the back, we're also, trying to get a leg up on the global biotechnology market, and we're going to see what you guys know about that and send the secrets back home, because that's who we're loyal to. I mean, it's just crazy. Why China? Why would we pursue these deals with the Chinese in the way? If these were Russian companies, nobody would even consider it. Oh yeah, sure. Let's give Russia Arkansas tax dollars and Arkansas tax incentive, and Russia will set up I don't know, what do they make over there? A vodka plant. I don't know. And it's going to create this many jobs, and people will be like, "What? No, I don't think so. I don't think we're going to do that with a Russian company, because there's still that whole issue between us." But for some reason, for some reason with China, everything's fine. Everything is fine. There's not going to be any negative consequences from this. Arkansas is very conspicuous in this whole deal, and it's our home state. What do you think about it? 870-275-9799. We'll be back in just a moment.
Hi, folks. I'd like to tell you about Conduit for Commerce. Conduit for Commerce is an Arkansas-focused nonprofit organization which receives no government funding. Its core beliefs are economic freedom, individual liberty, and limited government. Conduit for Commerce believes those principles are foundational to all individual freedoms and promotes these principles by educating Arkansans and your elected state officials concerning good government policies that will create a better life for all Arkansans. These traditional conservative values have proven throughout history to lift people from poverty, achieve individual desire, and assist in the pursuit of happiness. Conduit for Commerce operates on the basic belief that these principles and ideals of the American founding are worth conserving and renewing at each generation, especially today. Conduit for Commerce accomplishes this work only through the support and interaction of small businesses as well as individuals. Conduit for Commerce thrives from like-minded Arkansans' participation and partnership. It's only through the support of folks like you that Conduit for Commerce is able to be the conduit to the Arkansas State Capitol. Help us continue as Arkansas's primary small business policy entrepreneur through your financial support. Join us by visiting conduitforcommerce.org. Once you're at the site, click Support Our Cause at the top of your screen. Your one-time or monthly donation will directly impact Conduit for Commerce's mission to promote liberty and economic freedom in Arkansas. Together, we can build a liberty machine. That's conduitforcommerce.org.
Completely to the extreme. And looking at some of the issues on the state side of issues we're going to have to be dealing with down the road, and specifically in my district and Senate District 26, economic development is really important. And, looking at lower taxes to help stimulate growth and job growth and looking at ways to reduce our regulatory burden. I'm just going to be honest, Democrats hadn't been getting that right. They're not going to get that right. So folks, I think, are ready for a change. I've sat down with folks down there who have told me that they voted Democrat for a lot of years. They're going to be voting for me just because, well, for a couple of reasons. They look at what they see on the national scale, and it scares them a little bit. They see folks like Nancy Pelosi and AOC and the Squad and some of the rest of the folks, and they say, you know what, that's not who I am. That's not what I was. I'm going to vote Republican because of it. And
determined to drain the swamp in Little Rock, it's Conduit News Radio with Paul Harrell.
Did you see the article, Joe? It's in the Gazette, and it had to do with the streaming views with the Senate and how popular it was over the course of the last session. For those of you who don't know, Arkansas was, way behind the curve of the Arkansas Senate was way behind the curve of the Arkansas House. The House had been streaming online their meetings and their committee meetings and their session. They had video, they had audio, they had camera angles. They also had it archived for people to go and watch. And the Senate did not for a very long time. They were all secret. Well, so thankfully, there was a move. For you can say what you want. I mean, it was transparency. Okay, we're gonna do like the House. we're going to admit that we're the lower chamber and didn't have the good idea. So we're going to do like the House, and we're going to follow their lead. So the Arkansas Senate takes the lead and, follows the lead of the House, is what I meant to say. And so apparently, because of Senator Stephanie Flowers. Remember when Senator Stephanie Flowers got really upset at, I think it was Representative Ballinger's bill, Stand Your Ground legislation, or Senator Ballinger's bill, Stand Your Ground legislation. And I'm pretty sure she told Alan Clark, Senator Clark, the chairman of the committee, she's the vice chairman, to, quote, go to hell in the meeting. And that garnered millions of views across the country because she was going to. Now, a lot of leftists tried to use this as finally someone standing up and, calling out people who like guns for what they are. And, she did a good thing. But then, of course, there was they all hugged it out and made up. And there was flowers for Senator Flowers and everything was fine. But just kind of strolling down memory lane here. At least 430, Michael Wickline writes that at least 434 people watched the Senate's proceedings via video streaming on February 8th, at least 625 on March 8th, and at least 1,985 on April 8th during the last week of the session. This is, let's see, do they talk about, hang on one second, do they talk about the millions of views that went on? Because honestly, it had to have been Senator Flowers here. Let's see. The number of people watching the Arkansas Senate through live video streaming steadily increased during this year's session, the first in which its chamber proceeding and committee meetings aired on the internet. Rob Hatfield gave a 3-page report to the Senate Efficiency Committee. Quote, over time, as more people were aware of the Arkansas Senate streaming, the numbers went up. We saw a dramatic increase in the numbers after the March 6th Judiciary Committee meeting made national headlines. Senator Stephanie Flowers spoke out against the Stand Your Ground bill. Since local and national media used our video for that meeting in an indirect way, this helped promote that the Arkansas Senate was live streaming. Many national news outlets reported that committee meeting or part of it, and it was seen over 10 million times via social network and television news. 10 million times. Says here, Senator Linda Chesterfield, who chairs the Senate Efficiency Committee, on Monday quipped, quote, even though people thought millions were looking at us, we were not quite as popular. Senator President Pro Temp Jim Hendren said in a news release, quote, we knew that administration officials, lobbyists, reporters, and bloggers would all be watching, but nobody anticipated that the numbers would escalate so much. What happens in Vegas may stay in Vegas, but what happens in the Arkansas Senate is broadcast everywhere, he said, end quote. Well, he's certainly right about that. And it was really, I will just tell you, from somebody that, had to cover this day in and day out, and I mean, I think every reporter in Arkansas would agree with me. Wasn't it nice to be able to hold our elected officials accountable, but not necessarily have to be in the room at the time it was said? That you could be like, okay, I got to go to this committee meeting today. I can't go to this one. I'll watch it later. That was nice. And it helps get people the information that they need. We got one more hour. We're going to talk about Medicaid and the numbers and why your taxes have gone up, honestly.
The news and talk of Northeast Arkansas. This is News Talk 101.3 FM and 1230 AM KBTM, Jonesboro, an EAB radio station.
I wanted to remind remind you that if you miss the daily live broadcast, you can always catch up and listen across our digital platforms on your smartphone or computer. First, you can watch the show on Facebook. Just use your internet browser and type in facebook.com/Conduit News. From there, select videos on the left side of your screen. From there, you can watch the full 2-hour show each day or select specific interviews you want to watch. Another place you can watch the show is on YouTube. Just use your internet browser and type in youtube.com. Then, in the search bar, search for Conduit News. Select the Conduit News page as it appears. While here, be sure to hit the subscribe button and click the little bell to receive notifications when new videos are ready. From YouTube, you can also watch every live show daily and all the interviews I have with guests. More options are available at our website, conduitnews.com. Select Conduit News Radio with Paul Harrell tab. From here, you can watch each day's show live or watch old episodes and interviews. You can also catch audio-only versions of the show right here on this page of the website. For audio-only versions of the show, you have some options. For Apple iPhone users, simply use the podcast app and search Conduit News. Subscribe to the podcast and get each hour of the show automatically in your app daily. You can also download the SoundCloud app from your app store and search Conduit News to find our station. Conduit News is the intersection of conservative ideas and reality. And now you know. You've got many options to watch what we do, listen to what we do, and find out what government is doing in your name. Learn more at conduitnews.com.
So, that's indicative, I think, of Arkansas, especially some of these southern regions, these that have been historically Democrat. These folks are looking at what they see nationally and even what they see in Little Rock from the Democratic Party, and they're saying, look, those aren't our values. Those aren't Arkansas values.
Do you think that some of those voters down there, the ones that had been voting Democrat, that were they still also some of the kind of the historic holdovers who would vote for Democrats locally but maybe vote for Republican presidential candidates?
Absolutely. I mean, those counties went heavily for Trump in 2016. Those counties went heavily for Romney in 2012. So, so I think, yes, you're right. They have voted locally Democrat, but they've always been more, historically been more Republican nationally. But I think they're starting to realize that, look, local elections matter. And some of those counties have elected their first Republican county judge. Some of them elected the, more conservative county sheriffs. So, yeah, I think you're seeing a shift, and I think that this is a very winnable district. I think that people are ready for a change, and they're tired of, I'm running as a Democrat, but, I have your values. Well, maybe, but they see what happens in Little Rock, and they see what happens nationally, and they say, I don't think those are our values. We want someone who aligns with our values and who agrees on with us on the issue of abortion. And I think it's, and I've heard that from so many people. First question they want to know is, where are you on abortion? And are you running as a Republican? Oh, you got my vote because I know where you are on abortion. Mm-hmm. So some of those big hot button issues like that, in those areas, in the southern region there, in the Bible Belt, that's a big issue to folks, and it's a big issue to me as well. But they've looked historically at who's gotten that right, and Republicans have. And so, I think I just know that that area of looking at, historically what the numbers have been, and I think it's just ready to flip.
Yeah, again, we're talking with Ben Gilmore. He is a Republican candidate for State Senate District 26. District 26, can you kind of frame that for us geographically, just so if there's other people listening that don't quite get where District 26 is?
Yeah, so it's basically the whole southeast corner of Arkansas. So it's Ashley, Bradley, Chico, Deshay, Drew, part of Cleveland, part of Lincoln County.
Okay.
So that whole corner.
I think it's time we ask ourselves if we still know the freedoms that were intended for us by the Founding Fathers.
They seem to be in full-scale retreat from spending cuts and are talking about raising people's taxes again. And I have only one thing to say to the tax increasers. Go ahead, make my day.
If we lose freedom here, there's no place to escape to. This is the last stand on earth. Those who would trade our freedom for security have embarked on this downward course. Whether we believe in our capacity for self-government or whether we abandon the American Revolution and confess that a little intellectual elite in a far distant capital can plan our lives for us better than we can plan them ourselves.
Conduit News Radio with Paul Harrell is on now.
Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome. This is hour number 2 of the show. Coming up at the bottom of the hour, we're going to be talking with Jonesboro City Councilman or Alderman Bobby Long will be with us. Now, we're going to talk to him about a sales tax. Well, there's a special election, which is, special elections are called most of the time when people want to make sure their tax increase passes. The data backs this up. I mean, it's very, very uncomfortable truths for people who, are proponents of the sales tax increase. I mean, it is an uncomfortable truth. And in a special election, you do it so that you're able to raise people's taxes most of the time. That's what the data shows. It's convincing, and honestly, if it wasn't for now Senator, then State Representative James Sturch, Jonesboro, you guys we wouldn't be having special election, because the only way you could do it is if there was an emergency. Think about that for a second. If one guy hadn't gotten up out of his seat and walked out when his name was about to be called after he had just voted for it and was the deciding vote, if one guy, we wouldn't be that Fort Smith wouldn't have had their special election. All kinds of special elections that have taken place this year try to raise people's taxes. Think about that for a second. We need special election reform in this state. We need it. And, from the principle of they just keep taking more and more and more of our money. Now, I'll address this further, but I do want to say this because, you can hear the argument for passing a higher sales tax in any situation. And the argument is going to be, it's not that much money to you. It's a very minuscule amount of money that you'll pay extra, and it's going to have a big result. And that's the problem, is the big result. Because what the big result often is a massive growth in the size of government. Now, just gaming out. Let's just say, it's only a penny more, or it's only whatever the situation is. It's not that much money to you, to somebody who's rich, somebody who's middle income, and not that much money maybe even to somebody who's considered poor when it comes to the price of the goods they buy going up. Okay. But the amount of money that raises going to government is going to be used to grow government. And when government grows, the people's freedom tends to shrink. Because, just case in point, you allow the government to use the money for maybe what they say they're going to use it for, but then they use it for all this other stuff as well. They use it for all this other stuff that you have no idea. That's what we're seeing here. We see here broadly in the state of Arkansas that our tax policy drives our spending. They can't almost tax as fast enough because they're trying to spend so much of it. Anyway, that's the reason why that argument to me falls flat. It's just a little bit extra everyone's paying. Yes, I know, I got it. It isn't that it's affordable. That's what you're trying to say, that everybody's going to be able to afford it. Okay. And maybe not everybody, by the way, but Okay, I got it. It's more affordable. I mean, it's not that big of a deal. But then it's what the money is used for. And so you've got to understand that concept. It's one that is proven true every time this happens. That when the government grows, it's now taking up more of our resources, and that always tends to be permanent. Because if you say anything about cutting government or cutting services, the media will crucify you. Look at this headline. Speaking of government services, Andy Davis reporting services program overtops estimate. Arkansas Medicaid's cost up 4.7% in 2019. I like how this is phrased by Andy Davis in some cases, or at least I don't know if the word "like" is good, but I think it's an interesting way to phrase overspending. Spending by the Arkansas Medicaid program grew 4.7% during the fiscal year that ended back in June. From March 1st, when the shift to managed care occurred, to the end of the fiscal year, the payments to the companies totaled $540 million, or an average of about $135 million a month. Now, that's just in this one segment. However, information provided by the Department of Human Services to lawmakers last year indicates that the payments were expected to be about $79 million a month. Now, isn't that interesting? Managed care companies took the responsibility for providing services to certain recipients with expensive health needs. Managed care companies, okay? These companies are supposed to tell the government, we can take care of this population for X. That's the whole concept behind a managed care company, is that it'll be cheaper because the managed care company says, we'll do it for X. This is our price. Yet, again, the Department of Human Services told lawmakers that the payments to the managed care company would be $79 million a month, and it wound up being $135 million. Wow. Andy Davis, quote, the new expense more than offset reductions in other types of Medicaid spending, including a drop in spending on the expanded part of Medicaid known as Arkansas Works. Overall, Arkansas's Medicaid spending increased by $333 million to $7.4 billion. I thought the whole idea behind managed care was it was supposed to save money. Now, Governor Hutchinson said in a statement that he's, quote, pleased with the progress we've made toward his goal endorsed by a legislative task force in 2015 of curbing the growth of Medicaid spending. In terms of controlling costs, it's meeting our expectations, although it's probably a little early for final analysis. Okay, all right. Well, I mean, you're not going to get him to come out and say that everything he's been doing is not working. I mean, that's not going to happen. Obviously, he's going to say that everything he's been doing is an example of competency and good management. So this whole thing was that they're trying to save, if you'll remember, if you go back memory lane with me, they're trying to save $835 million a year from traditional Medicaid so that they can apparently give the money to a managed care company. I'm sorry. They're trying to save $835 million a year from traditional Medicaid, those who truly need it, those who are actually unable to take care of themselves, so that they can give it and pay for able-to-work adults to have government-owned health insurance and make Blue Cross Blue Shield rich. They want to save $835 million so they can give that savings to Blue Cross Blue Shield. I mean, I'm skeptical of this. Well, the reason I'm this skeptical is because this whole thing is the biggest scam ever. Medicaid expansion is the biggest scam ever on the people of Arkansas. Now, if they the doing it with the Blue Cross Blue Shield, that's what I'm talking about. Doing traditional expansion would have been totally irresponsible, but it wouldn't have been a scam where they're paying all the insurance companies all this money, make all these promises, claim it's conservative, it's not, and the insurance companies get a mandated profit in the legislation. Then the insurance companies obviously are going to tithe portions of that government money to certain PACs and certain consulting firms that hire lobbyists that are then allowed to make sure the program continues. And, I mean, that's the biggest scam ever, and it's all done. I mean, if you were to say to some of these people that, they're just greedy and they're just trying to get a guaranteed taxpayer-funded revenue stream to support their business, they would say, no, you're crazy. It's not about the money. It's just all because we care about the people. And we're so compassionate, and we care, and we just want to take care of people and provide them with quality health care. And, of course, the only thing that they have to do to check that box is to purchase an insurance policy, not actually see that the health care is provided, not actually try to get emergency room visits to go down, because wouldn't you know it, people still believe, some people got signed up on this thing, didn't even know they got signed up till they found out about it. That actually happened to somebody that I know. And you're telling me that didn't happen to some people that just grew up because of their socioeconomic status, that they thought that if you get sick, you go to the emergency room? Yeah, your compassion is not really compassion. It's all about profit. And you know what? I'm fine with people wanting to buy or sell something and make money for themselves, but not when you're doing it with taxpayer dollars. And that's why this was a giant scam. And every media outlet at this point should call it that. I mean, that's what it is. How in the world the left in this state, the media in this state, that is certainly left of center, doesn't have a conniption fit over the corporate welfare that is Arkansas Works Medicaid expansion is beyond me. I don't know how they silenced them. I mean, unless they're just like, well, we really are socialists, and so this is just one step to socialized medicine, so we don't care. Those Blue Cross Blue Shield executives will end up being absorbed into the national healthcare system when we take it all over in the end anyway, so it's, doesn't really matter. I mean, there's probably a lot of truth to that, by the way. Because the line between these insurance companies and the government, I mean, you can't tell where one ends and the other begins. They got a weird symbiotic relationship where the government taxes the insurance companies' premiums on the free policies for, well, they're not free, but you know what I mean? On the policies, they tax them. And so there's actually an incentive for the government to get more people enrolled in the program so that they can so that taxpayer money that they're already sending to Blue Cross Blue Shield comes back to the government. Man, I'm telling you. Okay, back on these numbers. Let's see. The target is based, this is Andy Davis, the target is based on a goal of saving the state budget $50 million a year to help pay the cost of Arkansas Works, which covers adults with incomes up to 138% of the poverty level. Yeah, the problem with that is, what was our share of Medicaid expansion in Arkansas Works this year? It was $138 million, and 4 years ago it was expected to be $50 million. $50 million a year was what we were supposed to be paying this time, and instead we ended up paying $138 million, or around about. Sometimes in the numbers in my head, sometimes I get things wrong, but I'm 99% sure that's accurate. The income cutoff this year, for instance, is $17,000. Let's see here. Keep going. Oh, listen to this. This was funny. In quarterly scorecard reports to Hutchinson and lawmakers, the Department of Human Services calculates progress toward the goal by comparing traditional Medicaid program spending since fiscal 2017 with what the cost would have been if the program had been growing at 5% a year since 2016. Boy, that's pretty funny, I think, because I know you're giving a report. It's like, well, if we hadn't done this, it would have been this. There's no real way to prove that that's true. There's no real way to prove if your argument's accurate or not, because your numbers don't mean anything. Your numbers don't mean anything. You're a government agency trying to act like you're saving taxpayer money. We've been there, done that. You can't trust them. You can't trust government estimates. And to suggest that you can, I mean, that's what I don't even know how lawmakers do it. And the ones that get it, I mean, how do you look at some of these bureaucrats in the face when you know and they know that their numbers are not actually real? They're not representative of the truth, because the government, it's take it to the bank. You know, they're going to give numbers that shape the, their political goals, what they want to accomplish politically. That's the numbers they provide, whatever those. So if you need it to be higher than normal to accomplish your goals, then you do it. Meaning, some people do that on tax cuts sometimes. Very rarely, but if you need it to be lower to accomplish your political goals, the bureaucracy is going to submit those. I mean, come on, what's more believable, that Jeffrey Epstein killed himself, or that these numbers are actually true? That's a tough one. So in a quarterly scorecard reports to Hutchinson lawmakers, the Department of Human Services calculates progress towards the goal. At the time that benchmark was established, the traditional part of the program spending over the previous few years had grown less than 3% a year, including an increase of 2.5% in fiscal 2016. But state officials and a consultant said at the time they didn't expect the slow growth to continue unless the state took steps to curb costs. According to the scorecard reports, traditional Medicaid spending grew by 4.8% in fiscal 2017, then fell 0.6% in 2018 before increasing 8.6% in fiscal year 2019. Meanwhile, enrollment in fiscal year 2019 remained flat, averaging about 667,000 people at the end of the month. Now that'd be traditional Medicaid, right? Mm-hmm. Folks, we've gone way over. It's 22 past, 23 past now. Let me take a break, a reset here. Tell me what you think about this. What is your faith? What's your level of faith in government estimates when it comes to looking at, for you, the taxpayers? If it's only about delivering the service, then you don't really care what it costs. And if the service is only about, in terms of expansion coverage, giving people a piece of paper that says you have insurance, but you never actually go to the doctor, what good is that? Back in a minute.
Hi, folks. I'd like to tell you about Conduit for Commerce. Conduit for Commerce is an Arkansas-focused nonprofit organization which receives no government funding. Its core beliefs are economic freedom, individual liberty, and limited government. Conduit for Commerce believes those principles are foundational to all individual freedoms and promotes these principles by educating Arkansans and your elected state officials concerning good government policies that will create a better life for all Arkansans. These traditional conservative values have proven throughout history to lift people from poverty, achieve individual desire, and assist in the pursuit of happiness. Conduit for Commerce operates on the basic belief that these principles and ideals of the American founding are worth conserving and renewing at each generation, especially today. Conduit for Commerce accomplishes this work only through the support and interaction of small businesses as well as individuals. Conduit for Commerce thrives from like-minded Arkansans' participation and partnership. It's only through the support of folks like you that Conduit for Commerce is able to be the conduit to the Arkansas State Capitol. Help us continue as Arkansas's primary small business policy entrepreneur through your financial support. Join us by visiting conduitforcommerce.org. Once you're at the site, click Support Our Cause at the top of your screen. Your one-time or monthly donation will directly impact Conduit for Commerce's mission to promote liberty and economic freedom in Arkansas. Together, we can build a liberty machine. That's conduitforcommerce.org.
That's the district.
Now, you've worked, Ben, previously, you've worked for Congressman Bruce Westerman. Currently, you're the Deputy Chief of Staff and Communications Director for Lieutenant Governor Tim Griffin. So how is that experience, specifically, working at the Capitol and, kind of knowing, seeing the whole process play out? How has that prepared you for public service or continued public service? Go ahead.
Right. Well, I like to tell folks that I've worked for or continue to work for two of the greatest guys, I think, conservatives in Arkansas. Bruce Westerman is a strong conservative for us in Washington and doing a great job for us there. And, of course, Lieutenant Governor Griffin is, just a solid conservative, very bold ideas here on stateside. But, one of the things I tell people is, I'm already representing that area. Why? Because I've worked for Bruce Westerman. I represented that area to him while he was in D.C. I was the representative.
Bringing you your daily dose of truth. It's Conduit News Radio with Paul Harrell.
Thanks so much for being with us. Okay, picking back up here in this article that we're covering. In a July 31st letter, Andy Davis writes, it was a letter to Hutchinson, Secretary of Human Services Cindy Gillespie, who makes a ton of money, said the savings from 2017 to 2019 based on the department's benchmarks have totaled $918 million, including $690 million that she attributed to the changes the Human Services Department had made to control costs. How do you get a savings of these numbers, this magnitude? Well, it's according to your benchmarks. That's how you do it, according to your benchmarks. Quote, while financial challenges remain, through your leadership and with the ongoing support of the General Assembly, Medicaid is becoming more financially stable and predictable while ensuring services for those most in need remain intact. Yeah, politicians are very compassionate on the surface. Bureaucrats too, as long as they're dealing with other people's money. I'm not saying personally they would never give to charity. All I'm saying is this is quite fine. And by the way, this letter is written as if it would be FOI-able or it would be for public consumption. While the financial challenges remain through your leadership. The Managed Care Program, one of the state's cost control efforts, involves paying companies to provide health benefits to about 45,000 Medicaid recipients with mental illness. The companies known as Provider-Led Arkansas Sharing Savings Entities. Provider-Led Arkansas Shared Savings Entities. Rainbows and unicorns. Began coordinating the recipient's care in February 2018 in exchange for monthly payments of $173.33 per recipient. Folks, if you want something, I don't suggest, I'll do it for you, but this stuff makes me want to pull my hair out. I'm going to be perfectly honest. And, here's my question. I know the media is obligated to report what the government is saying, but when we all know that the numbers are just put out there and are not reliable, at what point, you would think at some point, it wouldn't be a right or a left issue at all. The media would so hone in on the fact that government estimates are always wrong. We'll be back in just a moment.
I wanted to remind you that if you miss the daily live broadcast, you can always catch up and listen across our digital platforms on your smartphone or computer. First, you can watch the show on Facebook. Just use your internet browser and type in facebook.com/Conduit News. From there, select videos on the left side of your screen. From there, you can watch the full 2-hour show each day or select specific interviews you want to watch. Another place you can watch the show is on YouTube. Just use your internet browser and type in youtube.com. Then, in the search bar, search for Conduit News. Select the Conduit News page as it appears. While here, be sure to hit the subscribe button and click the little bell to receive notifications when new videos are ready. From YouTube, you can also watch every live show daily and all the interviews I have with guests. More options are available at our website, conduitnews.com. Select Conduit News Radio with Paul Harrell tab. From here, you can watch each day's show live or watch old episodes and interviews. You can also catch audio-only versions of the show right here on this page of the website. For audio-only versions of the show, you have some options. For Apple iPhone users, simply use the podcast app and search Conduit News. Subscribe to the podcast and get each hour of the show automatically in your app daily. You can also download the SoundCloud app from your app store and search Conduit News to find our station. Conduit News is the intersection of conservative ideas and reality. And now you know. You've got many options to watch what we do, listen to what we do, and find out what government is doing in your name. Learn more at conduitnews.com. Hi, folks. I'd like to tell you about Conduit for Commerce. Conduit for Commerce is an Arkansas-focused nonprofit organization which receives no government funding. Its core beliefs
for that area. So, and then now with working for Tim, you know, people still call me and they say, hey, can you help us with whatever, you know, constituent service, you name it. And so I tell people, look, I've already been doing the job, and I haven't even been hired to do that job. So, and, you know, I jokingly say that, but the truth of the matter is, you know, that's just absolutely the way it is. And so being in the state capitol, seeing how the process works, seeing how the process sometimes doesn't work, you know, and watching, you know, I'm usually in the Senate chamber when Lieutenant Governor is in there and they're in session, and seeing how the Senate operates and
Conduit News Radio with Paul Harrell is building a liberty machine. Find out more at conduitnews.com.
Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. Thanks so much for being with us. We are in the home stretch here on this, what is today, Tuesday? Welcome back. We've got Jonesboro Alderman Bobby Long is with us. Bobby, how are you?
Hello, Paul. Good to see you this morning.
Yeah, absolutely. Glad to have you with us. So, first of all, you've got some big, let's start with a great idea that you have had. For those of you who are listening, Jonesboro's got a special election for a sales tax. And it's coming up September the 10th. Sales tax increase. There's people for it. There's people against it. Bobby's against it. And you've got an idea. So tell us what that idea is.
I do. Many of you know that when all this started, the first thing that I advocated for was to slow down. Second was the splitting of that 1% sales tax, because half of it was to go to fire, half of it goes to $110 million worth of stuff that I don't think that eventually we will be able to afford. The tax also sunsets in 12 years. The city of Jonesboro has had a history with sunset taxes. Back in 2010, the police and fire, public safety, was voted in a 0.5% sales tax. Well, it was only supposed to go for 4 years. So after 4 years, the tax December 31 of 2014, that tax expired. Okay. Now here we are less than 5 years later needing some more. So I didn't really like that issue. I didn't like tying public safety with amenities. That was one of the main things. I thought that people needed an opportunity to vote one or the other, both or neither.
Right.
But of course, with the Finance Committee, I asked for a vote, to split the ordinance. That did not happen. Then when it got to full council, I realized very quickly that the votes for that happened were not there.
Yeah.
They weren't there.
Yeah, there wasn't even an attempt, a reason to even make a motion because it wouldn't have gone in.
Well, I don't know that I would have even gotten a second. Because, you had some that said, that posed the question, why would we even split the tax? And then another posed the statement that if we change it, then it no longer becomes the people's ordinance, but it becomes the city's ordinance. So I just didn't even do it. So
let me set this up. So right now, because it's a full cent, half cent for police and fire, half cent for these amenities or quality of life, there are some people who are against the amenities, but they are for police and fire, and they're thinking of voting. They're thinking of voting for this thing. Because they do want to support police and fire. So for people in that position, what do you say, Bobby?
Yes, and that has been the reoccurring theme from a multitude of people that I've talked to. And as I listened to the people, I realized, though, that there were a lot of other issues that this ordinance had that were not addressed. So what I did was I began to work on an ordinance of my own. And that's what I'm going to propose in a press release today, and you're the first one to hear about it.
Okay.
So this is the first time that I've brought this out. My ordinance, though, if the current 1% sales tax fails September 10th, then I will propose my ordinance. It gives a people the true option. Matter of fact, it is a single-issue ordinance, which means it is strictly for fire and police. Nothing else, strictly for fire and police. The continuation of the tax is provisional. This is, I think, key because it provides more protection for the funding of the fire and police than they've ever had. What do I mean by that? Well, I propose 1/4 cent instead of a whole cent. That means right now the city gets 1% taxes. Now that rate will go to 1.25. It will take our total tax from 8.5 to 8.75 instead of from 8.5 to 9.5. I think a lot of people had issue with that as well.
Right.
So this tax does not have a sunset. It's a permanent tax as long as one provision remains constant. And here's the provision. Upon the fire and police budgets being the same or increasing over the prevailing budget years, if their budgets are reduced, the tax goes away beginning January of the following budget year. So what does that mean? That means that, yes, the fire and police will get the 1/4%, but it also means that their current budgets will remain the same and not be reduced. So that was whether or not it's true or not, that was a concern for many people, that now that they've got this additional revenue stream, the fire and police budgets on the general budget side would go down.
Yeah.
Okay.
That's what happened. That's what's happened in the past.
Yeah, and that was the concern that this addresses, because what happens now is if the budget remains the same or increases, the tax still remains. But the minute the city adopts a budget in which the fire and police's current budget is reduced or does not stay the same, that tax will go away.
So if they're claiming that fire and police are priority, we're making sure that this ordinance will make sure that that we hold them to that claim. That if it's a priority, make it a priority all the time, not just when you want to pass a tax.
Right. And it just makes sense. You start thinking, well, can't we trust this person or that person to do that? And thinking, there's nothing wrong with a contract. What a contract does and what this provision does is it's not saying that people would do anything erroneously bad. What it's saying is it just sets forth guidelines to where we can trust one another, to where we can go about it and we can maintain a level of trust. And I think that this is what this ordinance does. It's a permanent tax, but it's a 0.25%. It's not 1%. It's permanent. It doesn't sunset. We've already been through the sunset things. I think sunset taxes are good when you have a specific project that has a specific amount of money that you raise for a specific set of time that the people want. This is not this. We've already been down that road less than 5 years ago. And now here we are back needing more money again. It also gives some security to the fire and police, knowing that there's not a cliff 10 years, 12 years down the road that they're going to have to fight again in order to keep money. Of course, it's lower than the 0.5% that they would get, but there's a probability that it will be a long-term type of deal, and you can you can start looking long-term instead of short-term.
And sales tax revenues increase. That's what happens because more people move to your community, more people do commerce.
Right. I also think that as Jonesboro grows into its skin, our sales tax will continue to increase.
Yeah.
When we annexed all that land, we sort of spread ourselves really thin. But now as Jonesboro starts to grow into its own skin, I think that sales tax revenue will increase, which will give more money to the fire and police without the worry of the general budget side going down.
Mm-hmm. If you're just joining us, folks, we're talking with Jonesboro City Councilman Alderman Bobby Long. He has just proposed a 0.25% sales tax specifically for police and fire if on September 10th the full 1 cent is voted down, which has a 0.5 cent for police and fire, another 0.5 cent for quality of life and that sort of thing. So I definitely think this is a great idea, Bobby. I mean, it's it's definitely going to give people an alternative who want the police and fire to get more money because of a crime problem or a perceived crime problem, right? I mean, there's a lot of people who are concerned about that right now.
There is, and I think that's a true concern. I also want people to understand, ever since I've got into city council and things like that, one of the main things is I don't want to sneak up on anybody, and I don't want to, make something that I don't want to create a disillusion between perception and reality. So let me tell you this. I will propose this ordinance, but this ordinance will have to come before Finance Committee.
Yeah.
It will also have to come before the full City Council. So if this fails, the first thing I will do is propose this to the Finance Committee. Now, I don't see where they would even bat an eye at passing this on through, getting it before the full City Council, and then getting it on to the ballot, which is something else that an issue that this addresses. I will not have another ordinance that will call for another special election. I want there to be time for there to be debate. I want there to be time for people to look at this and understand it and get a good grasp on it before they go to the polls.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So this would not be accompanied by a special election ordinance. This would be just an ordinance that will have plenty of time for the public to look at it, understand it, ask questions about it, and then go to the polls educated.
Yeah.
And vote.
You think you would want to do it in the general next year or the primary? The primary's something too that you could consider.
It would. I think you get more votes though in the general.
No doubt.
I do.
Yeah.
And for me to advocate for, in essence, the true voice of the people to be heard, I think it's important that our first option would be for it to be in the general election where there is more people voting.
Yeah, no doubt about that. I've got here, if you kind of look over the history, this is kind of interesting. Here's an article back in 2015 in the Jonesboro Sun. Proposed sales tax hike raises lots of questions. And I guess who is it? Chris Wessel, the editor. Maybe the mayor is hoping that as few voters as possible, mostly those in favor, will show up at the polls on November 10th to give him $16 million plus more to spend each year. So there was a lot of skepticism back in 2015.
Yeah, there was. If you were just to look at, go back into the archives of the Jonesboro Sun, you'll see that in 2000, a permanent tax was approved by the voters. However, this 1% permanent tax, half of it went to capital improvements, half of it went to the general fund. In 2010, a public safety half-cent tax was initiated. It was set to expire December 31, 2014. That raised our tax to 9%. In August of 2014, a special election was held, rolling that 0.5% for capital improvements into the general fund. So now the general fund not only had a 0.5%, but it had the other that was strictly for capital improvements rolled into it. This was a few months before the police and fire tax was set to expire. In December of 2014, that public safety half-cent tax expired, and there was absolutely no effort to re-up it or to make it continue on. What's interesting is back in 2010, when that public safety tax was initiated, it was sold as a way to prevent fire and police layoffs. So the people, of course, they immediately, voted for it. But then what had people scratching their heads was that after this 0.5 cent went away, the 0.5 cent from capital improvements went into the general budget. At that point, I believe even the Jonesboro Sun said something to the effect that Jonesboro has more money than it can spend.
Yeah.
I think that may have been in 2013.
Yeah, we have. Here's just a few articles, and I'll let you take it away, Bobby.
Yeah.
Let's see. 2014 council committee to discuss tax by the special election. Let's see.
I think it was in maybe 2013.
And then we got 2014. Nick's special election on sales tax measure. That's another one from Chris Wessel when he was against this.
Yeah, December 19th, 2013 article says, apparently Jonesboro is so flush with cash it can dole out 8.9% raises to the mayor, 2% across the board.
Yeah.
Apparently there's no need for the 0.5 cent public safety tax because city already has so much money it can simply pay for all the raises and perks itself. However, of course, you can see that in 2015, when a 0.5 cent was set to expire, and then 2015, there was a proposal for another 1% sales tax that people are sort of scratching their heads. What is this all about? Of course, that tax was voted down, and our tax rate stayed at 8.5. But irregardless of that, here we stand today. Our fire departments need 2 new stations. Our police, even though the spending that they said that they would use from this money, the police would have already needed to buy anyway. Their radios, I believe, are outdated and need to be updated. So this is money that the city was going to need to spend anyway. So irregardless of that, there are needs for our public safety, our police and firemen. And I've been a strong advocate for them ever since I've been on the council. And this is just another way that not only we give them money, but we protect what they're already getting. Yeah. And I think that's imperative.
I think that's the biggest, the best idea in the whole thing, actually.
I do. And, it's crazy. And I know that you're a man of faith and I'm a man of faith. And, when this was happening before the city council, I don't really know why I didn't make a motion to split this ordinance, but I sat there and I just did not. But then as I look back on retrospect, I can see that something better could have been proposed, because had this been split right then, it would have been 12 years. It would have been a 0.5%. They would have had the cliff. There would have, there's a lot of things that this ordinance addresses and corrects, and I think is more apt to what the people want than what it would have been had it just been split. At least here we have a 0.25%, but it's set for a long time. It has protections for the fire and police that they have never had before, in not only increasing their money with a specialized tax, but it protects their current budget levels as well, so they can't be reduced. And if they are reduced, the tax goes away. So I don't think there is a councilman or anybody that would look at a budget, reduce the fire and police budget, knowing that other 0.25% is going to go away.
Yeah.
That just doesn't make sense at all.
Yeah. I mean, if there's any police officers, or firemen listening to the show, which I know there are right now, and this is a good idea. This is a better idea for you guys, and in terms of protecting, your funding source. Now, there's still going to be others that are going to say,
yes,
we want the pools and the swimming pools and everything else, and so we still think that the current proposal is the best. But for those who really want to support police and fire, but not all this other stuff, if it is defeated, you're going to try to get this through the city council.
You better believe it. I will try with everything I have. Now, I can't guarantee anything, but I can guarantee you that I will propose this ordinance that I think addresses a lot of the concerns that people have right now. And the truth of the matter is, I also understand that there will be those, and there will be many of my friends, who will vote no for any tax at all.
Yeah.
And I totally, I totally understand that. And I understand where they're coming from, and I think that is totally great. That's awesome. However, one of the things that I want this to do is provide an option. And that was one thing I don't think the people had. It was an all or nothing type of deal. And I just don't think that was right. I don't think that was the way to go. And I have the ability to propose something that would remedy that. And,
that's what you're doing.
That's what I'm doing.
Well, I appreciate your thoughtfulness, and because that's really, I think, what this is. It shows that you are a thinker and you're trying to do the right thing, Bobby. And I know everybody's trying to do the right thing here.
They are.
I appreciate your ideas. Really
Well, thank you. And like I said before, when we can come in and debate things in the arena of ideas, we put forth our ideas. Team Jonesboro's putting forth theirs.
Yeah.
I have no doubt that that they think this is right. I don't think that they're trying to, to do something that they think would damage Jonesboro.
Correct.
And I totally agree with that.
Yeah.
At the same time, I may have a difference of opinion. My opinion is just as valid as theirs. I'm not going to go out and call them names and do anything like that, although I have been called names recently, and that's okay because I've got a tough skin. However, that is not going to impede me from doing what I think is right. And what I think is right now is to give people the knowledge that there will be an option if there's anything I can do with it.
Yeah, all right.
Do about it.
Alderman Bobby Long, sir.
Thank you.
Appreciate it. It's always great to have you on, and appreciate you spending time with us this morning. Folks, we're going to take a break and reset and be back with your meme of the day. Don't go anywhere.
And how
I wanted to remind you that if you miss the daily live broadcast, you can always catch up and listen across our digital platforms on your smartphone or computer. First, you can watch the show on Facebook. Just use your internet browser and type in facebook.com/Conduit News. From there, select videos on the left side of your screen. From there, you can watch the full 2-hour show each day or select specific interviews you want to watch. Another place you can watch the show is on YouTube. Just use your internet browser and type in youtube.com. Then, in the search bar, search for Conduit News. Select the Conduit News page as it appears. While here, be sure to hit the subscribe button and click the little bell to receive notifications when new videos are ready. From YouTube, you can also watch every live show daily and all the interviews I have with guests. More options are available at our website, conduitnews.com. Select Conduit News Radio with Paul Harrell tab. From here, you can watch each day's show live or watch old episodes and interviews. You can also catch audio-only versions of the show right here on this page of the website. For audio-only versions of the show, you have some options. For Apple iPhone users, simply use the podcast app and search Conduit News. Subscribe to the podcast and get each hour of the show automatically in your app daily. You can also download the SoundCloud app from your app store and search Conduit News to find our station. Conduit News is the intersection of conservative ideas and reality. And now you know. You've got many options to watch what we do, listen to what we do, and find out what government is doing in your name. Learn more at conduitnews.com.
And how legislation is moved through the chamber, and so it's been a wealth of knowledge and experience for me. It's been a pleasure to serve for the Lieutenant Governor and with Lieutenant Governor, and all of that is going to help me immensely if elected senator, because I think I already have a good idea of what the issues are. I have a great idea of understanding how the process works. So all of that plays into, helping me if I'm elected. But, and I tell folks down there, look, I've been working for bold conservatives. That's who I am. I'm going to still be a bold conservative.
Need your daily news fix? Don't forget to tune in to Conduit News Radio with Paul Harrell.
What do we got? Bad wireless service here? What's going on? Is it the internet? Okay, all right. Well, okay, so we're waiting. We've only got a few minutes left, Joe. This is hilarious. Okay, so we have been debating which meme to use all day, and we literally just decided on it a few seconds ago. And so that means Joe sends it via email to our show's computers, and then he gets it and he populates it on the screen. But it's apparently this one photo is just taking forever to send. Or anyway, it's an email. So, folks, if you're just joining us today, we told you really all day yesterday, and we did this in the first hour. Governor Hutchinson made it clear to the media over the weekend that it would be a mistake if companies were to withdraw from China entirely. Quote, "It's one thing to try to equalize trade. It's another thing to withdraw from trade with China. I think that would be a mistake." And, of course, this is in response to Donald Trump saying what he said, saying, I'll just tell companies to get out of China. Hutchinson said, despite the tension between the two countries, that he is, still feeling good about the 6 Chinese investments that we have. But this is what he said about these 6 Chinese investments, and I think this is certainly carefully crafted language. Those are decisions that are made by Chinese investors. They look at the economy just like everyone else, and they look at the trade disputes and impact it'll have on their individual businesses. So, again, the carefully crafted language here is he's attempting to communicate to the media and Arkansans by saying that Chinese investors are not beholden loyalists to the Communist Party. And they're just like you and me, or just like anybody in a Western democracy that can own private property and keep their own money. That's not that's who China pretends to be. And I, for one, wish we had leaders that understood that in our own state. Here's your meme of the day, courtesy of Ben_Redman1 on Instagram. It is a picture of a collapsing building labeled the Democrat Party, but there are planks holding the building up. And those planks are CNN, MSNBC, CBS, and NBC. We'll post this up right now at Conduit News Twitter, at Conduit News, as well as the Facebook page, facebook.com/Conduit News. What did you say, Joe? Oh, yeah, they are. Yeah. They're trying real hard, but that Democrat Party, that building is just coming down, isn't it? Arkansas, have a great day. Be safe.